Good evening. I'm John Herbert. I'm the new Director of Mission Integration and Pastoral Care at Franciscan Villa. I wish we could have all met in a different circumstance, but because of this pandemic and because of the safety that's necessary in keeping all of us safe, we have to take what we can get. Obviously, we'd all like to be at church on Friday morning celebrating Christmas or even midnight mass the night before. But since we cannot congregate this year, we'll make the best of what we can do. And we thought we would put something together for you from our house to yours. So what we'll be doing today is hearing the gospel from Christmas morning, and we'll have a reflection on that gospel. But interspersed with that reflection will be music that we all have come to know and love, and music that will hopefully make this time together more meaningful and Christmas more like Christmas. So to begin, we'll start with a song by my wife called Sweet Little Jesus Boy. She'll be playing the piano and singing for us. A reading from the Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being is him was life, and the life was the light of all people. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Now there was a man sent from God whose name was John, and he was a Baptist. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all those might believe in the light through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to being without him and through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God. Children who were born not of blood or of the will or flesh or the will of man, but of God and God alone. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and full of truth. So John testified to him and cried out, "This is he whom I have spoke of. This is the man who I said would be coming, whose shoelaces I am unfit to tie. He who comes after me, that ranks ahead of me, although he existed before I." From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. The law indeed, as we know, given to Moses, however, grace and truth came only through Jesus Christ. Now, no one has ever seen God. It is probable that no one ever will until we are within his presence, and only then will we be graced with that. But this John told of the one that was to come, a God whose only Son, who was close to the Father's heart, who was made him known to us. The Gospel of the Lord. And before we begin, another song, the Nativity Carol. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and all things came into being through him, and with him not one thing came into being. And what has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people, and this light shines in the darkness. And the darkness did not, and even today would never overcome it. For St. John, this particular 18 verses is the Christmas story set in a context of creation in the beginning. Here, creation is not an event of the past, but speaks of the ongoing life of God with his people. In other words, he makes it pertinent not only to people that first heard this gospel, but the people that live with it today, you and me. Here, St. John elaborates for us on the Genesis story of creation. You know, the part that says, in the beginning, God created this, God created that, let there be light, and there was. Land, sky, vegetation, living creatures from the water, birds of the air, living creatures from the earth, and humankind, humans made in the image and likeness of God. In fact, he makes the Genesis story understandable for us then and today, real for us, possible for us. Christmas is God continuing to give life to his people, and that's the way, as mature people, we need to look at it. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, according to Bishop St. Gregory of Nyssa, also a Catholic saint venerated by our church. Christmas is for us a symbol of recreation. It is God giving God's own life to his own people. And it is as if God said, I want my children to be able to see me, to hear me, and to even touch me. And so he took of himself and he sent to us his only Son. I want them to live my life. I want to live as one of them, to feel what it is like to live their life. And so God gave us himself in the form of his only Son, Jesus. And the Word became flesh. And the Word lived and walked among us. This is God in the flesh, the divine human, holy humanity. The symbol of recreation is God's celebration of humanity at its best. It is God's entrusting God's self to human beings. It is God giving himself to you and me and to each of us. It is God reaffirming humanity's goodness. We are of God. We are good. It is verifying for us that because we are of God, we all have the capacity to do what is right, what is pure, what is good. In essence, Christmas is the sharing of life between us and God. And that's why the early church could say that God became human so that humanity might become God. The Son of God became the Son of Man so that the sons of men might become sons of God. Divinity was clothed in humanity so that humanity might be clothed in divinity. Try and take in what I just said. That means we are holy and we are intended to be holy, each one of us. Not because we're entitled to it or because we have earned it with anything that we've done, but just as a gift from God. This is the gift of Christmas. And we've been given the power to become children of God, and all we have to do is say yes. And this is so not by blood or so not through our own being or our own will, but it's only from God, our Father. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. God sees in our humanity the opportunity and the way to reveal himself. However, we often use our humanity as an excuse, saying, well, we can't help what we do. We can't help that we don't follow what we should do because, after all, we are only human. And when we do that, we're actually using our limitations as an excuse. We fail to understand that as finite beings, God knows we cannot be infinite like him. We know that he knows that when we think about it. All he wants us to do is to try. And often we fail to see, to believe that in the Word becoming flesh and living among us, it is we who have become the tangible, outward, and visible signs of God. We are each other's visible signs. What we do for each other, what others do for us, how we serve those we love. That is the image of God in each one of our daily lives. I would bet you've never thought of yourself in this way. I bet you have never thought of yourself as possibly being the answer to other people's prayers. And I wonder if you've ever looked at anyone as a sacramental image of God. If you think about it, it's a lot easier to do if you remember how you look at your children or any newborn child, because I'd be willing to bet that there's nothing they could ever do that you wouldn't be able to forgive. And likewise, there's nothing any of us have ever done or will do that God, our Father, could not forgive. What we need to do is trust in that love. And we need to trust that about ourselves and about each other. The Word became flesh and lived among us for a reason. Jesus brought us the life of God. That life still exists with each breath we take and within each beating heart. Jewish tradition that holds stories. And remember, it's important for us to remember that Jesus was a devout Jew. Jewish tradition holds that rabbis tell a story about each person having a procession of angels going before them and crying out, "Make way for the image of God," because that's what we are. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not God, nor am I saying that. I'm saying that we were made in God's image. And because we are of God, we have the capacity to have the type of love that God offers, to have the type of goodness and live the type of lives that God would like us to live. Everywhere we go, our angels go before us, announcing the coming of the image of God. We just do not see them. We do not picture that from a Christian perspective. But that is the real truth of Christmas for all of us. It is always the Christmas truth for the person living next door, for those we love, for those we fear, for those who are like us and those who are different, for the stranger, for our enemies, for all. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. If we began to view life in this manner, the changes in this world would make it so profound. It would change how we see ourselves and how we see each other. It would change the way we live, what we do and what we say, how we act. It would make Christmas a year-round event. And Christmas would become a way of living and a way of being. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. The Word became flesh and has never ceased living among us. The Word became flesh and will never cease living among us. So make changes wherever you go, whomever you see, whatever you do, and whatever you say, and recognize that you, each and every one of you, are the image of God when someone looks at you. Make Christmas an everyday occurrence in your life. Make Christmas all about the Word made flesh. God bless you all and have a wonderful Christmas. I hope next year is much different. But we have to have faith, and with that in mind, let us end with this song. O come, all ye faithful. Merry Christmas, Franciscan Villa. Merry Christmas. God bless you all. Everyone, as Tiny Tim would say. Good night.